I watched a billionaire's daughter live in total darkness for 9 years. Everyone said she was blind. Then I changed one thing, and her father discovered the most horrifying truth of his life. Mira Navarro was 9 years old, pale as moonlight, soft-spoken, and according to every expert in that mansion, completely blind. The curtains stayed closed, the lights stayed dim, and every single night, Nurse Sarah gave her 2 drops in each eye, drops that were supposed to help her condition. But I'm Nora Raman, and I was hired to be Mira's companion, and within 1 week, I realized something was catastrophically wrong. This child could see, not perfectly, but she could see shapes, colors, light, movement, and someone was giving her medication to make sure she never fully realized it. So I did something reckless. I took her to the one room in the mansion with no curtains. I threw open every window. I flooded that room with sunlight. And when her father walked in and saw his daughter standing in the light, seeing his face for the first time in 9 years, everything exploded. What we uncovered next was so twisted, so calculated, that it would change how you think about trust, about family, and about the people we hire to protect the ones we love most. Let me take you inside the Navarro mansion, a place where silence was a rule and shadows were a religion. The estate sat on 12 acres of manicured grounds in Lagos, but inside it felt like a tomb. Every window was dressed in thick velvet curtains the color of charcoal. Every hallway was dim, lit only by amber sconces that barely pushed back the gloom. The staff moved like ghosts, their footsteps muffled by Persian rugs, their voices never rising above a whisper. There was a rhythm to the house, a careful choreography of routine and restriction, and at the center of it all was a little girl named Mira Navarro, 9 years old, pale as moonlight, soft-spoken and still. And according to everyone who lived and worked in that house, completely, tragically, irreversibly blind. That was the story. That was the truth everyone repeated like a prayer. Mira Navarro was born without sight. She lived in a world of sound and touch and memory. She needed protection. She needed quiet. She needed the curtains closed, the lights low, the world kept at a distance. Her father, Mateo Navarro, one of the wealthiest men in West Africa, had built his entire life around that belief. He hired the best staff. He paid for the best care. He made sure his daughter would never be hurt, never be overwhelmed, never be exposed to anything that might harm her fragile condition. But here's the thing about belief. When it's built on a lie, it doesn't matter how much money you spend or how tightly you control the environment. Eventually, the truth finds a crack, and when it does, everything falls apart. Mira spent her days in the same routine: breakfast in the small sitting room off the kitchen, lessons with a tutor who spoke to her like she was made of glass, afternoon rest in her bedroom, curtains drawn, door half open so the staff could check on her, dinner alone or with her father when he was home, which wasn't often, bath time, story time, drops administered by Nurse Sarah, a stern woman in her 50s who never smiled and never explained, then sleep, every day the same. The house itself seemed designed to keep her contained. Corners were padded, furniture was bolted. There were no sharp edges, no sudden changes in flooring, no risks. But there was also no color, no brightness, no life. Mrs. Kroll, the head housekeeper, a tall woman with silver hair pulled into a tight bun and a voice that could freeze water, made the rules very clear. Mira is delicate. Mira is blind. Mira must not be startled, confused, or overstimulated. Do your work. Stay out of her way. And for years, that's exactly what everyone did. But then Noor Rahman arrived. She was 21, fresh out of university with a degree in early childhood education and a mountain of student debt from putting her younger brother through school. She'd grown up in a modest neighborhood in Ibadan, the kind of place where neighbors knew your name and your business, where children played football in the street until the streetlights came on, where money was tight, but love was loud. The Navarro estate was a different world entirely. When Noor walked through the front door for her interview, she felt the weight of the silence immediately. It pressed against her chest like a hand, The job was simple. Mira needed a companion, someone young, patient, warm, someone who could sit with her during the day, read to her, play gentle games, keep her company. The pay was excellent. The hours were predictable. There was only one rule: follow the routine, don't deviate, don't question, don't interfere. Nor nodded and smiled and said all the right things, but even then, something felt off. Not dangerous, just wrong. Like the air in the house was holding its breath. Her first day, Nor met Mira in the sitting room. The little girl was perched on the edge of a velvet sofa, hands folded in her lap, head tilted slightly to one side, as if listening to something no one else could hear. She wore a pale yellow dress, soft cotton, no patterns, no buttons. Her hair, long and dark, was braided neatly down her back. Her skin was almost translucent, as if she'd never seen the sun, and her eyes, light brown, glassy, unfocused, stared at nothing. Nor sat down carefully and said softly, "Hello, Mira. My name is Nor. I'm going to be spending time with you." Mira didn't respond right away. Then, after a long pause, she said, "Your shoes are quiet." Nor blinked. She was wearing canvas sneakers. Mira was right. They barely made a sound. "How did you know I was wearing shoes?" Nor asked gently. Mira's lips twitched into the faintest smile. "I can hear the way you walk. Everyone walks different." Nor felt a small chill run down her spine. Not fear. Curiosity. This child was sharp, observant, aware, and yet everyone treated her like she was fragile and empty. Over the next few days, Nor watched. She watched how Mira moved through her routines with precision, never bumping into furniture, never tripping, never hesitating. She watched how the girl would tilt her head when someone entered the room, identifying them by footstep or breathing pattern before they spoke. She watched how Mira's fingers moved over objects with a kind of reverence, as if she were reading them with her hands. And she watched how every evening, Nurse Sarah would arrive with a small blue bottle and a dropper. Mira would sit very still. Sarah would tilt her head back, 2 drops in each eye. Mira would blink, wince slightly, and then within 10 minutes, her movements would slow. Her voice would grow quieter. Her eyes would glaze over even more. Nor asked once, casually, "What are the drops for?" Sarah didn't even look at her. Her condition, doctor's orders, that was all. But Nor couldn't stop thinking about it. If Mira was blind, why would she need eye drops? Then came the moment that changed everything. It was late morning, about a week after Nor started. She was sitting with Mira in the small library, reading aloud from a book of folk tales. The curtains were drawn as always, but one of them had come slightly loose at the corner. A thin, delicate beam of sunlight slipped through, cutting across the floor like a golden thread. Nor didn't notice it at first, but Mira did. The little girl stopped mid-sentence, her head turning sharply toward the light. Her breathing changed, quickened. Nor paused. "Mira, what is it?" Mira didn't answer. Slowly, carefully, she stood up from her chair. She took one step forward, then another. Her hand reached out, fingers stretching toward the light. And then, without warning, the ribbon tying back the curtain slipped loose and fell. Mira's hand shot out. She caught it. Perfectly, midair. Her fingers closed around the fabric with absolute precision. Nor's heart stopped. "Mira," she whispered, "how did you do that?" The little girl froze. Her face went pale. She dropped the ribbon like it had burned her. Her voice came out small, shaking. "Please don't tell them." Nor moved closer, kneeling down to Mira's level. "Tell them what?" Mira's eyes, those glassy, unfocused eyes, filled with tears. "They will bring the bottle. They always bring the bottle when I see too much." Nor felt the floor tilt beneath her. "When you see too much?" "Mira, what do you mean?" But before the girl could answer, the door opened. Mrs. Kroll stood in the doorway, her expression hard as stone. "Miss Rahman," a word. Nor rose slowly, her mind racing. She followed Mrs. Kroll into the hallway. The older woman's voice was low, controlled, dangerous. "The curtains stay closed. Always, do you understand?" Nor nodded, but her hands were shaking. She waited until Mrs. Kroll walked away. Then she went back into the library. Mira was sitting again, hands folded, head down. Nor knelt beside her and whispered, "I won't tell them, I promise. But Mira, I need you to tell me the truth. Can you see? Before we continue this story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Because what happens next, what Nora uncovers in the days that follow, will make you realize that some prisons aren't built with walls. They're built with trust, and the most dangerous lies are the ones told by the people who say they love you. Mira didn't answer right away. Her small chest rose and fell with little breaths, and her fingers twisted together in her lap like she was trying to hold something inside that desperately wanted to escape. Finally, in a voice so quiet, Nor had to lean in to hear, she said, I see things. Not like you. Not everything, but I see shapes, I see warmth, I see when the light changes, I see colors sometimes when they're bright. Yellow, red, I see shadows move. Nor felt her throat tighten. How long have you known? Mira's voice cracked. Always, I've always known. But when I was little, I told them. I told Nurse Sarah I could see the bird outside the window. I told Mrs. Kroll I could see the flowers on the table, and they gave me the drops. More drops, and then I couldn't see anything for a long time. So I stopped telling them. I stopped trying. Nora's hands balled into fists. She forced herself to stay calm, to keep her voice steady. Mira, does your father know? Mira shook her head quickly. No, he thinks I'm blind. Everyone thinks I'm blind. And if I tell them I'm not, they'll take me away. They said so. So I stay quiet. I stay still. And I let them give me the drops. That night, after Mira was asleep, Nor sat in her small room and opened her laptop. She typed in the name of the medication she glimpsed on the label of the blue bottle. Cyclopentolat. It was a dilating agent, used to blur vision temporarily for eye exams. It was not meant for long-term use. It was especially not meant for children. Prolonged use could cause cognitive fog, light sensitivity, dependency, and in some cases, permanent damage to developing eyes. Nora stared at the screen, her stomach twisting. Someone was deliberately keeping Mira's vision suppressed. Someone was making sure she never fully realized what she could see. But why and who? Over the next several days, Noor began to test Mira quietly, carefully. She would place a small brass bell on the table across the room and ask Mira to point toward any sound she heard. Mira pointed directly at it every time. She would drop a red silk scarf onto the floor without making a sound. Mira's eyes would shift just slightly toward the color. She would hold up a silver coin in a sliver of light that slipped past the curtain. Mira would turn her head, tracking the glint. Each time, Nora's certainty grew. This child was not blind. She had partial vision, and someone had spent years making sure she never knew it. Someone had been poisoning her sight, drop by drop, day after day, and convincing her it was for her own good. But Nora also began to notice something else. She was being watched. Mrs. Kroll appeared in doorways more often, her eyes cold and assessing. Nurse Sarah began checking on Mira at odd hours, always with that blue bottle in hand. And one afternoon, while cleaning up after lunch, Nor found a small camera tucked into the corner of the bookshelf, angled directly at Mira's usual seat. She didn't touch it. She didn't say anything, but she knew they were monitoring her. And they were monitoring Mira. This wasn't just a household. It was a system designed to keep one little girl in the dark. Then Mateo Navarro came home. He arrived on a Thursday evening, his presence filling the house in a way that was both comforting and unsettling. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, with graying hair and tired eyes that carried the weight of an empire and a grief he never spoke about. Mira's mother had died in childbirth. Mateo had raised his daughter alone, or rather, he had hired people to raise her while he built his empire and tried not to drown in his own sorrow. He loved Mira, that much was obvious. When he walked into the sitting room that evening and saw her, his entire face softened. He knelt down, took her small hands in his, and said, "My bright star, how are you?" Mira smiled, a real smile. "I'm good, Papa, I missed you." He stayed for 2 hours. He played the piano for her, a soft, melancholy piece that filled the house with something other than silence. He asked her about her week, her lessons, her stories. He never once asked if she could see, because he believed she couldn't. He believed the lie so completely that he never thought to question it. And when Nurse Sarah arrived with the blue bottle, he didn't flinch. He didn't ask. He simply kissed Mira's forehead and said, "Be good, my love." Papa has to travel again tomorrow, but I'll be back soon. Nor watched from the doorway, her heart breaking. He had no idea. He was a man drowning in his own guilt and exhaustion, and the people he trusted most were using that against him. After he left the room, Nor found him in the hallway, pulling on his coat. She hesitated, then stepped forward. "Mr. Navarro, may I ask you something?" He glanced at her, distracted. "Of course, why does Mira take those drops every day?" He frowned slightly. "It's part of her treatment. Der ADME prescribed them years ago. They help manage her condition," but Nor pressed gently. "What condition exactly?" His expression hardened just slightly. "Miss Raymond, I appreciate your concern, but Mira's medical care is not your responsibility. Your job is to keep her company, not question her doctors." He wasn't cruel. Just tired, just trusting, just wrong. Nor nodded and stepped back, but her resolve only strengthened. If Mateo wouldn't listen, she would have to make him see. Literally. That night, a storm rolled in. Thunder cracked over the estate, shaking the windows. Lightning split the sky in jagged white lines. The power flickered once, twice, then steadied. But in Mira's room, something shifted. The wind caught the edge of the heavy curtain and pulled it back just enough to let in a flash of lightning. The room lit up, bright and sharp, for just a second. Mira was standing by her bed. And in that moment, Nor, who had been walking past the door, saw her head turn toward the window, saw her eyes widen, saw her take a step forward, not hesitant, not fumbling, but sure of it, saw her reach out her hand toward the light like a plant reaching for the sun, and then the curtain fell back, the room went dim again. Mira stood frozen, breathing hard. Nor stepped into the room. "Mira," she said softly, "did you see that?" Mira's voice trembled. "I saw the sky, I saw it break open." Before Nor could respond, footsteps echoed down the hall. Fast, heavy. The door swung open. Mrs. Kroll stood there, her face pale, her eyes sharp. "What is going on in here?" The curtain came loose, Nor said quickly. "The storm." Mrs. Kroll's gaze shifted to Mira, then back to Nor. She stepped into the room and closed the curtain tightly, securing it with a pin. "Light is not your friend, Mira. You know that. It will hurt you. It will confuse you. You must stay in the dim, for your own safety." Mira nodded obediently, but Nor saw her hands shaking. Mrs. Kroll turned to Nor, her voice low and cold. "If you cannot follow the rules of this house, Miss Raymond, you will not remain in it. Do I make myself clear?" Nor swallowed hard. "Yes, ma'am." But as Mrs. Kroll left, Nor looked at Mira, and Mira looked back, and in that moment, they both understood this wasn't about safety, this was about control. And it was time to break it. Nor spent the next 2 days planning. She couldn't go to the other staff, she couldn't call the authorities without proof, and she couldn't just take Mira and run, so she did the only thing she could think of. She wrote a letter. It was short, direct, and desperate. "Mr. Navarro, I know you love your daughter. I know you trust the people caring for her, but I'm begging you to come home and see something for yourself. Please meet me in the conservatory tomorrow at noon. Your daughter's future depends on it." She slipped the letter under the door of his private study late that night, praying he would read it, praying he would come. The next morning, Nor told Mira they were going to play a game. A secret game, just the two of them. She led the little girl through the back hallways to a part of the mansion Mira had never been to before, the conservatory. It was a glass-roofed room at the far end of the estate, built years ago by Mateo's late wife. It had been locked and unused for nearly a decade, covered in dust and filled with forgotten furniture. But it had one thing the rest of the house didn't. No curtains, just glass, just light. Nor unlocked the door. She pushed it open. And for the first time in her life, Mira Navarro stepped into the sun. The little girl stopped just inside the doorway, her breath catching. The light poured over her like water, warm and golden and overwhelming. She blinked rapidly, her hands flying up to shield her face. Nor knelt beside her. "It's okay. It's just light. It won't hurt you. I promise." Slowly, Mira lowered her hands. Her eyes, still dilated from years of drops, struggled to adjust, but they did adjust. And when they did, she gasped. "I can see the leaves," she whispered. "I can see the dust in the air. I can see you, Nor. I can see your face." Tears streamed down Noor's cheeks. She took Mira's hand. Let's see what else you can see. They spent the next 20 minutes in that room. Noor placed objects around the space, a red apple, a yellow flower, a silver spoon, a spinning top. Mira identified every single one. She pointed to the warmth of the sun on the tiles. She smiled at the sight of a bird outside the window. She laughed, a sound so pure and bright it shattered something in Noor's chest. And then the door opened, but it wasn't Mateo. It was Mrs. Kroll, and behind her, Nurse Sarah holding the blue bottle. "What do you think you're doing?" Mrs. Kroll's voice was ice. Noor stood, placing herself between the women and Mira. "I'm showing her what she's been denied her entire life." "Step aside, Miss Ryman. Now." "No." Sarah moved forward, her face hard. "You are endangering this child. She is photophobic. She cannot tolerate light. You are causing her harm." Mira's small voice rang out, shaken but clear. "I'm not in pain. I can see. I can see the room. I can see the sky." Mrs. Kroll's jaw tightened. "Mira, darling, you are confused. The light is tricking you. You know you cannot see. You know you need your medicine." She reached for Mira. Noor stepped forward, blocking her. "Don't touch her." Mrs. Kroll's eyes flashed. "You have no authority here. Sarah, give her the drops. Now." But before Sarah could move, Noor did something reckless. She walked to the far wall and threw open every window in the conservatory. Sunlight flooded the room, bright and blinding and beautiful. Mira didn't scream. She didn't cover her eyes. She stood there, blinking, adjusting, her pupils tightening in real time. And then she turned toward the sun, her face tilted up, her arms spread wide, and she whispered, "It's warm. It's so warm." Mrs. Kroll lunged forward. Noor grabbed Mira and pulled her back. And in that exact moment, the conservatory door slammed open. Mateo Navarro stood in the doorway, his chest heaving, his eyes wild. He had gotten the letter. He had come. "What the hell is going on here?" he roared. Everyone froze. Mrs. Kroll recovered first, her voice smooth and practiced. "Mr. Navarro, thank God you're here. This young woman has taken Mira into direct sunlight against all medical advice. She is putting your daughter at serious risk. We were trying to protect her." Mateo's eyes shifted to Mira. The little girl was standing in the center of the room, bathed in light, her face turned toward her father, and for the first time in 9 years, her eyes locked onto his. "Papa," she said softly, "I can see you." The room went silent. Mateo's face went pale. He took a step forward, his voice breaking. "Mira, what did you say?" "I can see you, Papa. I can see your coat. It's black. I can see your eyes. They're brown like mine. I can see the bird outside the window. I can see the light. I've always been able to see a little, but they gave me the drops, and the drops made me stop seeing. So I stopped telling anyone. But I can see, Papa, I can see." Mateo's hands were shaking. He turned to Mrs. Kroll, his voice low and dangerous. "What drops?" Mrs. Kroll straightened. "The medication prescribed by Dr. IDME. For her condition." Mateo's eyes narrowed. "What condition? She's blind. She's always been blind." Noor stepped forward, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. "Mr. Navarro, the drops are cyclopentolate. They're used to dilate pupils temporarily. They're not meant for long-term use, especially not on children. And they don't treat blindness, they suppress vision. I don't know why they've been giving them to her, but I know your daughter can see, and I know she's been able to see for years." Mateo stared at Nurse Sarah. She shifted uncomfortably. "It was doctor's orders," she said weakly. Mateo's voice was a whisper now, sharp as a blade. "Show me the prescription." Sarah hesitated. "Show me the prescription. Now." She couldn't, because there wasn't one. Mateo turned to Mira. He crossed the room in 3 long strides and knelt in front of her, taking her face gently in his hands. His voice cracked. "Can you really see me?" Mira nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I've wanted to tell you for so long, but they said if I did, they'd send me away. I was so scared, Papa. I'm so sorry." Mateo pulled her into his arms, his shoulders shaking. "You have nothing to be sorry for. Nothing. Do you hear me? Nothing." He stood, still holding Mira, and turned to Mrs. Kroll and Nurse Sarah. His voice was cold, final. "You're both fired. Pack your things. You have 1 hour. If I ever see either of you near my daughter again, I will have you arrested." Mrs. Kroll opened her mouth to protest. Mateo's glare silenced her. 1 hour, get out of my house. They left, slowly, silently, defeated. Mateo sank into a chair, Mira still in his arms, and looked at Noor. His voice was raw. How did you know? Noor's throat was tight. Because I watched her, really watched her, and I realized she was seeing things no blind child should be able to see. So I tested her, and then I knew. Someone was lying, and I couldn't let it keep happening. Mateo closed his eyes, fresh tears sliding down his face. Thank you. Thank you for caring enough to risk everything. Noor knelt beside them. She's safe now. That's what matters. 3 weeks later, after consultations with pediatric ophthalmologists, the truth was confirmed. Mira had partial vision, likely present since birth, with the ability to perceive light, color, shapes, and motion. Her vision wasn't perfect, but with proper support and without the suppressive medication, it was functional. She could read large print, she could navigate spaces independently, she could see faces, including her father's. The doctors said that with therapy and time, she might improve even further, but more than that, they said she should never have been given those drops. Ever. The damage, thankfully, wasn't permanent, but it had been cruel, and it had been deliberate. Investigations revealed that Mrs. Kroll and Nurse Sarah had been acting under instructions from a distant family member who stood to inherit a portion of the estate if Mira were deemed unfit or incapable. Keeping her blind or believing she was blind kept her dependent, kept her controlled, kept the inheritance in question. It was greed, cold, calculated greed. The authorities were contacted. Charges were filed. Justice began to move. But for Mira and Mateo, the real healing was just beginning. Mateo took an extended leave from his company. He had the curtains removed from every room. He had the conservatory restored and filled with plants and light. He spent his mornings with Mira, teaching her to read again, this time with her eyes. He took her to the park. He let her see the sky. He let her run, and he apologized. Over and over, he apologized for not seeing, for not asking, for trusting the wrong people, for letting her live in darkness when she didn't have to. Mira forgave him because she understood something most children her age didn't. Sometimes the people who love you the most are the ones who get fooled the easiest, and sometimes it takes a stranger to see what family cannot. Nor stayed, not as a maid, but as Mira's guardian, her advocate, and eventually her friend. Mateo offered her a permanent position with full benefits, a generous salary, and the authority to make decisions about Mira's care. He trusted her because she had earned it, and because she had done what no one else had been willing to do. She had asked the hard questions, she had challenged the system, she had refused to look away, nor accepted, not for the money, but because she loved that little girl, and because she knew that Mira still had a long road ahead. Learning to live in the light after so many years in the dark wasn't easy. There were hard days, days when Mira was overwhelmed by brightness, by color, by the sheer amount of visual information she'd never processed before. Days when she was angry at the people who had stolen so much time from her. But there were also beautiful days, days when she saw a butterfly for the first time, days when she painted her first picture, days when she read a book on her own, days when she looked at her father and said, "I'm happy, Papa. I'm really happy." One afternoon, about 6 months after that day in the conservatory, Nora and Mira sat together in that same glass-roofed room. The sun was pouring in, golden and warm, and Mira was drawing with colored pencils, her face scrunched in concentration. She paused, looked up at Nor, and said, "Do you think I'll ever stop being angry at them?" Nor set down her book. "At Mrs. Kroll and Nurse Sarah?" Mira nodded. "I know I'm supposed to forgive people, but sometimes I think about all the years I spent in the dark, and I get so mad I can't breathe. Is that bad?" Nor shook her head. "No, sweetheart, that's not bad. That's human. They hurt you. And anger is your body's way of protecting you, of saying what happened wasn't okay. You don't have to forgive them, not now, maybe not ever. What matters is that you don't let that anger trap you the way they tried to trap you. You feel it, you acknowledge it, and then you choose what to do with it. Mira was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I think I want to help other kids. Kids like me who are being told they can't do things or who are being lied to. I want to tell them they're not alone. Nora's eyes filled with tears. I think that's a beautiful idea, and I think you're going to change a lot of lives. Mira smiled, just like you changed mine. Nora reached over and took her hand. We changed each other's, she said softly. That's how it works. So let me ask you, what would you have done? If you were in Nora's position, working a job you desperately needed, in a house full of people who had more power and money than you could ever imagine, would you have risked everything to challenge them? Would you have believed a 9-year-old girl over trained medical professionals and authority figures? Would you have thrown open those windows knowing it could cost you your livelihood, your reputation, maybe even your safety bed? Or would you have told yourself it wasn't your place, that someone else would handle it? Because that's what most people do, not because they're bad, but because challenging systems is terrifying, because speaking up feels impossible when you're standing alone, because it's easier to believe that the people in charge have good intentions, even when the evidence says otherwise. Mira is thriving now. She attends a school where she's learning to navigate the world with the vision she has, and where no one tells her she's broken or limited. She has friends, she has hobbies, she has dreams. She wants to be an artist, she wants to write books, she wants to travel and see all the colors of the world she was told she'd never experience. And every single day, she chooses to step into the light, not because it's easy, but because she knows now that she deserves it, that she always deserved it. Mateo has become a different kind of father. He's present, he's attentive, he listens, he doesn't make assumptions. He doesn't delegate her care to strangers anymore. He learned the hardest way possible that love without attention is just neglect with good intentions, and he's committed to never making that mistake again. And Noor? She's exactly where she wants to be, not because the job is perfect, but because she gets to watch Mira grow. She gets to be part of a story that could have ended in tragedy, but instead ended in healing. She gets to wake up every day knowing that she made a choice that mattered. One morning, Mira is standing in the conservatory, surrounded by flowers she planted herself. The sun is streaming through the glass, warm on her skin. Her father is playing the piano in the next room. Nora is sitting on the bench nearby, reading a book and looking up every so often to smile at her. And Mira is painting, a canvas full of colors she once thought she'd never see. Yellow like the sun, blue like the sky, green like the leaves, red like the flowers, and gold, bright shimmering gold like the light that pours through the windows every single morning. She dips her brush in the paint and adds one more stroke. Then she steps back, tilts her head, and smiles. Mira turns to Noor, her eyes shining. Thank you for giving me the day. Noor kneels down, holding the little girl close. You gave it to yourself, sweetheart. I just opened the door. Thank you for watching. Now tell us, where are you watching from? And what would you have done if you were Noor? Would you have opened the windows? Let us know in the comments. And if this story moved you, subscribe so you never miss another one. Because there are so many more stories like Mira's, stories of people who were told they couldn't but did. Stories of courage in quiet places, stories that remind us all that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to accept the darkness. Until next time, keep your eyes open, keep your heart soft, and never stop asking questions.